I am Tathagata Roy, about 69, and by profession a civil engineer. Anyone would wonder why I got interested in a subject like the Eastern Partition of India and what came of it. It's a long story actually, but I'll begin at the beginning. When I was just 8 years old, I remember I was going with my father to somewhere, I think Shantiniketan, through Sialda station. Sialda station at that time, I think this was 1952 or 53. Sialda station at that time was absolutely a hellhole. Whole lot of refugees from East Pakistan had come there, and then they had settled down in the station itself. That is where they slept, that is where they ate, that is where they excreted even. And therefore, I mean, you can imagine, it's a pure, absolute hell. Now, when I was just finding my way through that crowd to catch a train, I asked my father, who are these people, what is the matter with them? My father said that they are refugees. Now, I was an inquisitive boy, so I kept on asking, what is a refugee? Then my father said that they have come away from East Pakistan. Now, my father was what is called in India a secular person. A secular person in India is one who will never see anything wrong with what the Muslims do. Muslim can do no wrong. That is you could say that is the basic tenet of secularism. So I asked my father, who are they? Eventually I got it out of him that they have been driven out by the Muslims from East Pakistan. So I said, why aren't you driving the Muslims out of here? Because I was conscious that there were a set of people who were bearded and who were Muslims. Then my father said, don't you ever talk like that. So I shut up. And what could a boy of 7 or 8 do? But the question remained. Then when I went to engineering college, in the year 1964, I remember some boys from Dhaka, East Pakistan University of Engineering and Technology, which is now known as the Bangladesh University of Engineering and Technology, BUET. At that time it was IPUET. Some students from IPUET came and joined us in the 4th year class. It was a 5-year course, and 4th year was pre-final year, say more or less equivalent to a junior in an American university. So it was not usual. People usually got in at the very beginning. Joining somewhere halfway was quite unusual. So I wondered what it was. And eventually it came out that in 1964 there was a riot in East Pakistan. Not a riot actually, a pogrom in East Pakistan. As a result of it, the Hindus were driven out. These were students from IPUET. They couldn't pursue their studies over there. And then they came back to, then they came away to India, and they eventually managed to get admission to Bengal Engineering College. I am still in touch with them. One of them is one Shukumal Talukdar, lives in Seattle area and in the US, and I got a lot of material from him. Now, I asked them, and actually my ancestors came from what is now Bangladesh. And one of them turned out to be from the same place from where my ancestors came, where my mother and father were born. So I asked them, some kind of empathy was established. I asked them, and then eventually we sort of established an equation. And after questioning them, I came to the conclusion that what is called secularism in India, there is some very real bit of hypocrisy in that. That why are we suppressing the story of the pogrom of Hindus in East Pakistan? I looked up, I was a very voracious reader, I still am. And I used to read anything that I came across, including paperbacks. Quite seriously. So I looked up literature after getting to know these boys, and then I found nothing. Over the years, this thing culminated in a yearning to know more about these things. It also gave me an idea to come into politics, which I eventually did. In 1990, I joined the Bharatiya Janata Party, which is described somewhat incorrectly as a right-wing nationalist party, right-wing Hindu nationalist party of India. It is right now the ruling party of India at the center. Now, while all this time, the seed of that idea, it remained in my mind that I was always inquisitive about what happened, what happened, why did it happen, and why, more than anything else, why has it been suppressed so long? My father had died by that time, but before he had died, off and on I used to ask him questions. He was very ecstatic about the way East Bengal was, the greenery was unbelievable. He used to say the prosperity was quite of a different level from what their prosperity, from what it is in West Bengal. But the matter of the persecution of Hindus by East Pakistan, he would clam up. He would not go beyond a point because of his own beliefs. I also asked my mother. My mother was also not particularly forthcoming. My father had been brought up in Brahmanbadia, then and my mother in Sylhet. So they knew the place, but whatever I could get from them. Then I asked my father-in-law also. He had grown up in Dhaka. And with all these things, I thought that something ought to be done about it. Now, much later, I came across a book by the African-American Nobel laureate author Toni Morrison. She had written, at that time I didn't realize it, but this is what was churning in my mind. She had written that if there is a book that you would very much like to read, but it has not been written, then you must go and write it. I mean, this is an incredible statement which somehow prompted me. At that time I didn't know of the statement. I came to know of it much later. But this is one thing that prompted me to write this book. So I started writing this book. I started interviewing people, and by that time, this was in the late 90s. By that time, many people were dead, and many people were many who had suffered it were they were suffering loss of memory and all that. But in spite of that, I could get sufficient material to get together a book, which resulted in this, my first edition of My People Uprooted. I couldn't get a proper publisher because no publisher was prepared to touch this thing for two reasons. One is that what is called secular ethos in India, that a Muslim can do no wrong. And secondly, that I was not a historian by profession. I was a civil engineer of all things, so who was I to write all this history? So, well, I eventually managed to find a very indifferent publisher. I got the book published, I got it released, and then some interest was generated. All this while, I was trying to find out who else has done this, any kind of research on this subject. I found that in all, total number 3 people, the total number of 3 people have done research on this subject, of which I was the only person resident in India and from East Pakistan. One person was a gentleman called A.J. Kamra, who had died by that time, who was a West Pakistani refugee. He did not know any Bengali, but he realized that the terrible injustice had been done to Hindus in East Pakistan and Bangladesh, and he went ahead to write it. Then the second person was a classmate of mine from Bengal Engineering College. His name is Sachi G. Dastidar. Sachi G. Dastidar. He was a professor of the University of New York in Old Westbury. It's in Long Island. I don't remember the name of the university. I think it's University of New York. And the third person is Shubhendu Chaudhary. I mean, third person is me, of course. And the fourth person I'm now meeting is Shubhendu Chaudhary. My idea behind writing this book and keeping this thing alive, which is something which is the dearest thing to my heart. I have made it the mission of my life. It's there on Twitter also. My idea is to encourage research and find out more and more material. I have not been able to access any archival material on this thing principally because of resistance from the police in India, and Bangladesh of course would be the same thing. So I would like some professional historian to go into this, access archival material and get together a real history of the exodus of the Hindus from East Pakistan and Bangladesh. Meanwhile, I do what I can to the extent I can. This is more or less the story.